Well, hello and welcome to the next PAX panel. It is the Up Your Game panel, the building blocks for better online gaming. My name is Ben. I am going to be your moderator. Very excited to be here. We also have Nathan Gumley, the gaming lead from Telstra, Luke Barlow, the CEO of NetDuma. I am Paul from Grace, a variety content creator, Vandy, esports commentator, and Legacy esports stream manager. And Domino Jack, a great content creator, host, all of the above. So I might give a brief opportunity for everyone from our panel to introduce themselves personally. Nathan, mate, we might start with you. Gaming lead at Telstra, that sounds like a pretty cool job. What do you do?
So spent the last few years kind of working in the media division at Telstra, and then more recently transitioned into a gaming lead role, which is a combination of leading our product development efforts on networks, so across mobile and fixed, as well as partnerships in the gaming space with people like Microsoft. Yeah,
nice. And obviously, online gaming, very reliant on your ISP, so it's important to have someone on board for Telstra whose focus is gaming, so that's really cool to have. Luke, the CEO of NetDuma, do you want to tell us what that's all about?
Yeah, cheers, Ben. So we are a software tech startup based in the UK, and NetDuma is all about giving you control over your connection. So traditionally, it's really hard to do anything on your network. Most people are probably too scared to even touch their modem after they've set it up. We bring a whole set of easy-to-use features that let you take control over your network and get you the best connection possible when you're playing online. So we're all gamers in this company. That's how we began, because we were just so sick of getting lag when we played online. I like to think we kind of lag rage so hard, we started a company to basically solve it forever. So that's what we do at NetDuma.
Yeah, awesome. I think obviously networking and your router, etc., pretty underrated aspect by the average gamer when it comes to online gaming and connectivity. So that's awesome to hear. I am Paul from Grace. Obviously, most of you probably know her, a content creator. Grace, what is your day today? What do you game with?
So I stream full-time on Twitch, normally like Monday to Friday. I try to have a little bit of off-screen time on the weekends and do some fitness here and there as well. So just trying to set a good example as someone who's a gamer and also fit, to try to break the stereotypes of, the slob kind of lazy gamers, I guess.
Yeah, awesome. And a big agree when you take a look at a lot of the esports pros, a big part of their life is actually mental health and fitness and things like that. And, having the whole complete package certainly helps when it comes to gaming, just like it does traditional sports. Vandy, esports commentator, streamer, and Legacy esports stream manager. I'm sure Legacy is big into fitness as well, being part of the Adelaide Crows. What does your day today look like?
It's quite interesting. It just really depends what's going on. So day to day, managing the stream team that we do have, making sure all their needs are met, catching up with them one-on-ones. It's just really a lot of also internal updates on how they're going and making sure that if there is things that partners need them to do, I'm on top of that. For esports, if there's any events, just like this weekend, there's been quite a few events with Valorant, so that's been nice, but just getting prepped and involved with that. And then same for Grace in terms of streaming, whenever I get the opportunity, just streaming, but I like to keep the weekends free as well for mental health, but also catch up with my husband as well as my dog. It's trying to keep everything well-rounded, I guess, right?
Yeah, and I think that's part of the, the whole thing about gaming. Literally anything in life is a bit of balance goes a very long way. And last but not least, Domino Jack, content creator, streamer, shoutcaster, esports admin, a bit of everything, right?
Oh, Domino's muted.
Oh, that unmute button, we'll get there.
Sorry.
That's going to be tip number one for online gaming is unmute your mic. Appreciate you help take the one for the team there, Domino Jack, and helping us show that one off.
You're not a real streamer unless you haven't started stream with your mic muted at least once, I say. I should know that as a streamer, though, to unmute your mic. I work for the Australian Esports League. That's my main job. I am a project coordinator and graphic designer for them, and I help with a bit of their social media management as well. And like Vandy and Grace, I also just try to stream when I can and get some content creation in.
Yeah, nice. That's what we like to hear. And for me, my name's Ben and I work at ESL, the company that puts on like Intel Extreme Masters and Melbourne Esports Open here in Australia, the two biggest esports events that we've got going at the moment. I also shoutcast video games for a living, so that's pretty exciting when I get to do it. So I guess kind of the point of this panel is that obviously there is so many things that go into competitive gaming or to trying to be at your peak. It's networking, it's your gaming rig, it's all sorts of different things. And we're here to kind of try and break these down for you today. And hopefully you can take away one or two tips maybe to help you with gaming from home, help you with your setup, your networking, maybe what monitors you use, all sorts of things we'll work through today. And hopefully it'll be really useful. If you do have questions, we'll be going through questions at the end. So you're welcome to put your questions in Twitch chat if you're there. Alternatively, if you're in the Discord, we're in the Unicorn Theatre right now on the PAX Discord channel. So if you pop your questions in there when we get to the end of the panel, I'll go back through and I'll ask them all together at the same time. So let's kick this one off. The first question we're going to look at is, what are the biggest roadblocks to success and improvement right now, but for Aussie gamers? Vandy, I'm going to go to you first.
This one's an interesting one because even growing up, I think the biggest one was our internet and infrastructure around internet. Yeah. It feels like we've really just lagged behind the rest of the Western world and modern world, it feels like. Yeah. Definitely no pun, right? But that's just been the biggest hurdle, I think. And it's slowly getting better. I mean, NBN was announced and we now have access. I think something really worth noting as well is the fact that people in Australia now can actually stream. For the longest time, it was only people who could access it, something like cable or just met certain requirements. So with the NBN rollout, it's helped, but I still think we're still a long ways off. And I think even when we look at our internet rankings, I think we're still in the triple digits or something ridiculous. So I'm oh my goodness, it feels like we're lagging behind despite being part of the modern world.
Yeah, we're certainly slowly catching up, both with obviously the NBN and 5G rolling out and things like that. So it's come a long way, I feel, from me when I started 7 years ago streaming esports, and I had 1.2 megabit up, which is about probably a sixth of what most streamers are actually streaming at the moment. And I tried to get a business internet connection, and it was going to cost me $500 a month to get 10 megabit up, which most people get 40 now with the top of the line NBN plan. So Grace, what is your experience here?
It's so I had 0.8 upload when I first started streaming on Twitch, so I was streaming in 480p. So I totally understand what that's like. But I think in the modern day, one of the biggest obstacles is definitely local servers. So for me, I play a lot of Apex Legends, and we play on Singapore servers. We play on Tokyo. There's just no ranked on the local Sydney servers. So we're playing on 100 to 150 ping, and when it's something that does require precision. The lack of player base in Australia is a big one for a lot of the big FPS games, for sure.
Yeah, that's a really good point. Particularly when you think the more you look at any particular game that has ranked modes, right? And the more game modes that have ranked, the worse it is. If you have 4 different game modes, then you split that play base across, and we're already starting with quite a low play base to begin with. And then, as you said, if you are having to play overseas, it can be kind of rough, between 120 and 200 millisecond latency. When you're coming down to seconds, it can make life really tough when you're playing the best of the best. Yeah, it's definitely less than ideal. But again, we are slowly getting there, and we do see servers come to Australia for different games. And I think over time, it is slowly getting better. But, with only 26 million people, there's only so much you can ask for, I suppose. When we're talking about the state of play in Australia, what other challenges, technology limitations, and things like that are hitting Aussie gamers? Nathan, you're the head of gaming at Telstra. What are your thoughts on this?
Yeah, I think you guys have kind of touched on it pretty well. For us, the NBN has made a pretty big improvement to the average Australian, it's fair to say, but that's not consistent for everybody. Some people are on different tech types. There might be a cable where your upstream isn't as great. At least currently, you might be on fiber to the premise where it's great, or you might be in areas of the copper network, so fiber to the node, where you're struggling to even achieve 100 meg down, let alone kind of 20 meg up. So that inconsistency for a lot of people, I think, is really difficult. And a big focus for us is how we kind of work to overcome some of those challenges, and that's as much working with the NBN in terms of how you upgrade parts of the network, how you give customers more options. But I think you touched on as well, there's obviously new technologies, things like 5G, and some of those limitations that people have had around either throughput upstream or more importantly, latency on 4G are really overcome with 5G. So there is a really good, promising future, I think, for a lot of Australians in tackling that. And then, I think downstream has just become more important. One of the things that's super interesting for us is if you look at the last kind of 5 years, a lot of the peak of our traffic across our network has always been driven by media, streaming video, YouTube, Twitch, things like Netflix. But that's changed, and we've seen that change in COVID. I think that shift in the industry in Australia to move from physical consumption to digital, people downloading, and obviously the sizes of uploads, if you look at, say, Call of Duty and some of those uploads that have come across in the last 6 months, drive a new peak across telco networks. And it's a different type of traffic profile, but it is a challenge for people that are obviously wanting to play straight away, but require that update. So we're kind of looking at a bit of that. And then, the competitive side is super interesting around, what opportunities are there to kind of overcome some of those challenges in terms of player base? Because we hear stories from streamers and esports players that, it is, some of them have gone to the extent of moving to other countries to get to that player base and to get to those ranked tournaments. And I think there is definitely a big opportunity for telcos and people like Telstra to face into that and say, hey, how do we make and reduce latency for people that want to play more competitively and want to play out of region? And I think Luke kind of has a fair bit of experience with that as well.
Yeah, it seems like a really good point. Like, particularly, I know teams like in Dota 2 and in Counter-Strike have had to move overseas. Dota players seem to move to Malaysia. Counter-Strike players seem to move to North America. And it's literally about competing against people who are better than you. If you're the best team in your region and you're consistently the best team, but then you go overseas and you lose, you're only getting experience against better teams when you lose overseas. And being able to play out of region, essentially, like you talked about, would be a massive boost, particularly Southeast Asia, where we're kind of close, but just a little bit too far away. So, Luke, what's your experience? Obviously, you're coming from, you are the CEO of NetDoom, but also, as you said, you're a gamer as well. And I think that a lot of people don't recognize how important networking within their own home is as well.
Yeah, I think that's spot on. So, just a bit of history. I cut my teeth kind of playing Halo 2 and Halo 3 back in the day. And it was like the Wild West in those days. Like, you could always hear your opponent during the game. So it was chaos. And basically on that, you realize just how widespread the other players were. So you'd often jump online and you get matched with somebody in Mexico, and then the next game someone in California, and then the next game someone in the UK. Yeah. And that's a real roadblock, because you're trying to get better at the game, but each and every time you play, your ping just changes again and again and again. You can't get consistent experience. So that's why we invented one of our features, which we call the geofilter. And effectively, you can ring fence the servers you want to play on, no matter which game you're playing. So, for example, if you're based in Australia, you could just draw a fence all around Australia. And let's say you jump online, say the Call of Duty. If you get matched on a Singapore server or a Japanese server or wherever it is, your modem will block that connection and keep searching again until it finds one in Australia. And the beauty of that means is game after game after game, you're playing on the same consistent ping. And that's, I think, huge, because I think a big roadblock in improving is learning to blame yourself rather than external factors. So if you lose, I mean, we've all been there, right? Like, you lose, it's not your fault. It's because it lagged like crazy, right? We've all done it. So that's kind of what we try and do is give you control and give you much more consistent experience. Of course, the other big thing that's happening right now is we're all using far more bandwidth than we ever have, working from home, particularly taking off given COVID. And the problem with that is, right, you're all trying to play games, and you also your friends watching something on Netflix, someone else has got a Windows update going on. If you're on limited bandwidth, which you are, especially in Australia, you're on limited bandwidth in general, how do you balance all that? And you can't really. And what obviously happens, we've all been there again, you start getting caught in a queue and you start lagging again. And then again, it's not your fault that you lost your game. It's a connection. Yep. So again, we let you allocate bandwidth to the things that matter the most. So you can literally say, okay, gaming is the number one most important thing in this house. Then it's working from home, then it's streaming, whatever the order is. And that gives you, again, a lot more control over your whole experience. And I think just one final point to say, kind of comparing Australia to the rest of the world, is you guys really do have it tough. It's like remote, I think, your location, you're so far from other servers, you're very reliant on your own local player base. So I think, probably of anywhere in the world, you guys get sympathy, I think, for how much tougher it is for you guys to get a good experience online.
Yeah, no, it's definitely rough. And all those things you mentioned about networking, to me, hit home because working for ESL, we have to put on a lot of big competitions. We have the pros come in, even to our studio in Sydney, and they expect the absolute best, right? If something's not off, they will let you know about it. They will let everyone on the internet know about it. And we employ IT experts to make sure that everything's working right, that all the ports are right, that Windows updates aren't going to, like, all the things that you need to do, and it takes a lot of work. And I think it's hard to expect someone at home who may not have that knowledge to be able to do that. So if you're saying there are a lot of things that you can do just with software automatically that's easy to understand, I think that's potentially a really big deal for gamers and streamers and whatnot. Domino Jack, what has been your experience? What are the issues that you have faced here in the region?
I think everyone's kind of hit the nail on the head with the internet. Obviously, the internet has been one of the biggest issues probably in Australia. I thankfully now have NBN fiber to the premises, so I have a really good speeds at the moment. But when I first started streaming, I was living in a place where I couldn't get NBN, and the best thing I could do was 4G. So I would have a 4G little thing, and yeah, I'd be using that. So I definitely think that is one of the biggest challenges. And also, as already been mentioned, when you do get higher up in the ranks of certain games, you're limited to the pool of Australians, unless you're VPNing over, and then yeah, you're playing on high ping. So yeah,
it is rough, and that's a really good point, right? Like, the better you get in ranked matchmaking, the less people there are to matchmake with. So it gets more and more difficult, even for games that might have a lot of people on the local server. They're all not of the same skill level as you. So it's just another hurdle, I suppose, for people trying to go pro, who rely on matchmaking, for their week-to-week games and to sort of skill up. I think it can definitely be pretty tough. So, Nathan, what's your experience here with the internet and networking in general? For me, as a gamer, I'm originally from Brisbane, and I could get, back probably 5 years ago, it was pretty average. I moved. When I move house now, I literally call up an ISP and I find out, can you tell me what internet I can get to this premises? Can you give me an estimation of what I'm going to get? And that's my number one priority for picking somewhere to live, as silly as that sounds, as someone who works in this space. Is that something I'm going to have to keep doing, or are things going to change, do you think?
I think there's certainly an element of that. I mean, my experience is actually pretty unique. I am in an NBN area, but for whatever reason, the NBN can't connect to my house, which is pretty strange. So
you've been hit hard there, Nathan.
You've been hard. There are some pluses to working at Telstra. So I have 5G as an alternative, which is great. Yep. And haven't been given coronavirus yet, so that's also a good positive out of having 5G in my house. But yeah, look, I think there's that varying level of connectivity, I think, will continue to exist for a period of time, and I think the addition of extra options for customers like 5G, like I said before, NBN looking at upgrading certain pockets where they know it's quite bad is going to help. And there'll always be an element of making sure, before you maybe sign a new lease or decide to buy a house, you're kind of acutely aware of the connectivity that you have. So that's been a really big part. And look, I think it'll become a bigger part for customers, right? Because we're on the kind of verge of cloud gaming and a whole new wave of kind of bandwidth and continual bandwidth that we probably haven't seen in the gaming space yet. And you've got that combination of bandwidth requirements of, say, like 20 megasecond for a cloud gaming stream, as well as that latency requirement of like sub 30 milliseconds. So it's only going to get greater, the need for good connectivity. And I think gaming is the thing that's going to drive that. And that's going to put pressure on telcos like Telstra and on people like the NBN to uplift the internet connectivity for Australians, which is a good thing.
Yeah. I think it's, particularly if you're not from Australia, right? I think it's hard for people to recognize the limitations to the things that we need to deal with. When you think of a country with 25, 26 million people, the country's the size of the United States without Alaska. And to make sure that everyone has the best internet possible, it's costly. There's a lot to it, right? So, it's not, I don't think anyone's expecting miracles, but it kind of sucky if you find yourself in an area where things just don't work. And I guess you literally experienced that, but for you, 5G has fixed it. So that's a pretty positive.
Yeah, I think there's definitely an element of kind of in-home networking as well, which is at times kind of foreign, right? Because as Australians, all of us have been on 4G connections or at times ADSL connections or poor cable connections, and you would never think that your Wi-Fi is the thing that's causing an issue. Or maybe in some cases you're wired up through Ethernet anyway. But as that kind of bandwidth is improved and connectivity is improved, what we see actually in a lot of cases is it's not just about that last mile connectivity. It's actually a lot to do with Wi-Fi performance, Wi-Fi capability in the home. And if people are running on Wi-Fi, making sure that you're connected to a 5 gigahertz network if you can. Us looking to kind of simplify that for customers with band steering, but also looking at things like Wi-Fi mesh that make sure that you kind of get that more consistent Wi-Fi experience in more places of your home is really important, both for latency as much as bandwidth. So that's kind of been an interesting angle that seems to have really kind of cropped up in the last couple of years, and I think a big part of that is more people transition to the NBN and getting faster speeds, but still recognizing
you may not experience it. Yeah, exactly. You may not realize that this is a limiting factor, but as soon as you're paying for 100 down, but you're not getting that through your Wi-Fi, that's maybe when you notice that you've got an issue. So I'm sure there's a lot of things to talk about there as well. Grace, if we talk actual gaming setups, right, and I think streamers and content creators probably have pretty elaborate gaming setups as well. But what are your tips for having the best gaming setup possible, and perhaps maybe even tips as well that we're not talking about spending thousands of dollars. There's some simple tips there as well, I assume.
Yeah, I think it depends on the type of gamer that you are, for sure. Like if you're focused on FPS, you're going to have different needs. Like, for example, if you play an FPS and you have like a melee button, normally what I'll do is bind that to my mouse, like trying to make sure that your whole workflow, I guess, during the games is as smooth as possible. If you're a streamer, the one thing that I would definitely recommend is getting your chat window just a little bit slightly out of your field of view, because my streaming in particular is very focused on the community, but there are moments where I'm playing like a sweat lord and I want to actually like do a good job. So I've changed how my chat is, and I have it kind of like over to this side. So when I'm playing, I'm like focused here. So chat can be there distracting me and whatnot, but it's out of my line of sight. So I think like just really honing in on your focus and having your monitors set up in a way where, my OBS preview is over here. So it's not in my direct line of sight. It's not distracting me. My chat's over here. Like the gameplay is in the forefront. So if you're trying to be competitive while you're also live streaming, I think, having distractions kind of outside of that field is definitely a big tip.
Yes, it's a good point, because you're as you said, you're trying to chat to your community, you're trying to play the game. If you start going bad in game because you're trying to chat to your community, then that can be frustrating, and then you interact with the community not as well as perhaps you were, and it's just this awful cycle.
And it's just a cycle.
Exactly right. I was watching a streamer the other day who has text to speech on, and people like to spam sevens, and it's like 777. So he just got a foot pedal. So once he's like, all right, he's trying to play his game. As soon as it gets to a certain point, hits the foot pedal and it mutes the text to speech. So that seemed like a good one to me.
I think on top of that as well, like obviously with the main games that I play personally is like PUBG and Apex and BRs. So directional audio is like a big factor. So finding a headset that, has good noise cancellation. If you've got outside sources of audio coming in, you want to try and mitigate that as much as possible. Depends on type of like mouse player as well. I'm like a wrist player, so my DPI is super high. So I don't need a lot of space on my desk, but for people that use, like their entire arm, they might need some more room. So taking all of those things into account, you might need, a bigger desk, a smaller desk, certain peripherals. They're all a factor.
To me, it makes sense in like focus on one thing at a time and find the best way to do that bit. And once you've got that set, you can move on to the next bit, and then, just trying to find your best gaming setup. I definitely look at some of the people post their setups and they're playing on this little desk, and I'm like, I just couldn't do that. And I'm impressed. They're better than me at games, but their setups is
a lot of it is trial and error as well, because I've had people come into my stream all the time asking what my DPI is, and it's kind of like, it's not really relevant, because what my DPI, like what works for me, is not necessarily what's going to work for you. So I think just finding that sweet spot with your DPI and your sensitivity and your setup and everything, it's a little bit of trial and error, and you can definitely look to other people for advice on what tech they'd recommend in terms of, build quality and that kind of stuff. But yeah, I think it's definitely a lot of personal preference for sure.
Yeah. Domino, Jack, what about you? What's your experience in this? What are your tips?
Like Grace has said, it is very individualistic. It's very unique to each person. What works for one person is not going to work for someone else. But as Grace mentioned, DPI, the only suggestion I'd have with that is making sure you use the same sensitivity across games, because every game does have a different sensitivity, but there are calculators online. So for me, for instance, I know my Overwatch sensitivity, so I can go to an online calculator, put in my information for Overwatch, my DPI of my mouse, and it will spit it out for, say, Fortnite or Valorant, and go, this is what you should be playing in that game. And that way, that means you just have a consistency of what you're playing across games, and that's going to help a lot with your gameplay. So that's the only thing I can, thank for that.
I think there's definitely lots of things to take away. Even for me, I used to play on a 60 hertz monitor, and I didn't realize until I got, at the time, 120 hertz monitor. Like, now, if I go back, I can feel the difference in the game.
Yeah.
And people are like, oh, you can't. But if I sit down at a PC with a 60 hertz monitor, I will notice that it's a 60 hertz monitor. And back in the day, to get like 144 hertz or whatever used to be super expensive. Now I feel like they've all come down in price. And for me, like, if you wanted to be like a pro gamer, or you wanted to be at your best, I think it's like that's a crucial aspect to at least consider.
Yeah, and when it comes to monitors, it can be very important. Obviously, different monitors are going to give you different frames per second as well. And some games moving so fast, especially like Overwatch, you want something that's going to give you a high frame rate so you can see everything that's going on quite clearly and react appropriately.
Yeah.
So monitors can be very important, Yeah,
it seems to make a difference for sure. All right, so we've chatted through a couple of tips just for gaming in general. Luke, what do you see as the main issues? What mistakes are people making with their home network? Back in the day, I used to just have like what I would call quote unquote ordinary Wi-Fi. I didn't really do anything to it. I was just using my home router. Then I went to Ethernet over power, and I found that to be okay. And then I got gigabit internet, and I realized that my Ethernet over power wasn't good enough. Now I just have a network cable running through my whole house. What do you see as like the main things people are doing wrong, and what would be your tips for fixing those?
Yeah, I think you nailed the first point I was going to make, actually, which is play wired if you possibly can. And I think a lot of serious gamers know that, mostly from a bad experience playing over Wi-Fi. Because even if you've got the best router in the world, if there's a load of stuff on your connection, or even it might not even be in your own home, it might be next door or other interference, you're trying to seriously play online, that can be a big problem. So try and play wired wherever you possibly can. I think another big mistake is people talk about speed when they play online, and I don't think they necessarily understand that could mean one of two things. So speed could mean your bandwidth speeds, right? And I think a lot of people think, well, if I get a gig connection, that's it, I've got the best gaming connection of all time.
Yeah.
But that doesn't solve everything, right? Because speed could also mean your ping, which is the time it takes to go from your home to the server and back again that you're playing on. And really, that's the most important thing. Like, ping is king. So the real question is, how do you improve your ping? So obviously getting more bandwidth helps, because if you have more bandwidth, then it reduces the chance of someone in your connection using it all and making your ping go up because it gets caught in a queue.
Yeah. So
that's the big side of it. But the biggest thing is, how can you make sure you're playing on servers that aren't too far away from you? I think Grace said at the start, I can't remember who it was actually. Sorry, someone said at the start, having to play on Southeast Asian servers is a nightmare when you're trying to play competitively. So I think understanding that ping is what matters and doing everything you possibly can to reduce your ping is the most important thing. So play wired and look to upgrade your network setup as well, and start to take control of your connection is very important.
Yeah, obviously you have something that helps to do that. Are there other options around? Like, what about VPNs, right? If I have a VPN theoretically for gamers that should target you a set way and route you a set way to a destination, does that help? Or is that really not making much difference?
I think it's really situation dependent. So most people will probably get once your connection leaves the home, you're probably going to be routed in the most efficient way, but not always. And that's where these like WAN optimization technologies can be pretty helpful. When the event that you're not being routed in the most efficient way, it can stop that and send you through a better route. They can help, but I think the biggest problem is within the home itself. So touching on points we made earlier, which is, people using all your bandwidth, that causes you the biggest problems, and that's where we come in. That's where you can take the most effect, I'd say.
Yeah, and I think you can kind of notice it, right? Like, when you run a speed test, obviously that'll be the big graph going up and the big graph going down. But normally at the start, there's the number, and it's your latency or your ping. For me, I literally moved exactly where I wanted to go, and I'm going to say I get 3 milliseconds to the server. So look, I'm pretty excited by that. But where I used to live in Brisbane, I'd get 70. So that's a pretty big difference, and that's just like the first step of the process, I assume. And then everything beyond that adds to it. So that's what you're looking at. If you think you've got a fast internet connection, but your latency is really bad, as you said, you're going to notice it in gaming, I suppose. Nathan, you mentioned 5G, and we've chatted about 4G. What are your thoughts on common mistakes? And can you explain, does 5G or will 5G actually help my latency?
Yeah, it will. Yeah, massively. So it'll fundamentally change the latency outcomes across mobile networks, which is really exciting. We've also been looking at how we solve for some of that on 4G, specifically for online gaming, because that traditionally has had challenges, particularly with jitter. So there's a fair bit of work we're doing at the moment in looking at how we improve it for 4G and 5G, specifically for gamers. But yeah, that'll be a big uplift. And then we're also actually kind of working really closely with Luke and his team to look at how we bring, and we've announced that today, a beta trial, but essentially launching the Duma capability across our fixed broadband products as well. So really looking at how we improve those latency outcomes. And I think you touched on a really important point there, right? Which is we live in a big country and not everybody lives in the same part of the country. And someone's latency outcomes in Western Australia, sometimes even some of the servers that you connect to in WA are completely different to someone that's in Sydney. So we are spending a lot of time kind of working back into publishers and trying to look at what are those opportunities to improve latency outcomes for kind of our customers to be able to get those small advantages. And, sometimes 5 to 10 milliseconds can make a massive difference for everybody. So we kind of see the combination of bringing more of that kind of software and control and partnering with people like Duma to bring product in, partnering with publishers to make sure that we're really optimizing that traffic across our network. And then, the introduction of new products like 5G that ultimately kind of really start to step up in terms of latency outcomes. And I think that's also just super interesting for, potentially some of the esports space as well, because there is a mobility element, right? It is a mobile network. And I think for a lot of people, your ability to play in certain areas is restricted by that connectivity. So 5G in a way kind of unlocks your ability to play in more places. And I think that'll just be super interesting, both for cloud as much as it is, competitive play, and even for platforms like Switch, right? Which is it's a mobile platform, it's a portable device, but your ability to play online while you're out and about is really limited by the network. So we're really excited about, the kind of potential for that and what that next generation mobile network will lift up alongside some of the software products that we're working on with Duma.
And I think in the future as well, particularly as mobile gaming picks up, like across Southeast Asia in particular, mobile gaming is huge. I've commentated games in Asia where the prize pool for the mobile game was a higher prize pool than the PC game of the same game, essentially. So as we catch up on that in Australia, you're going to find that mobile gaming and the connections for mobiles are important as well. I think a really, for me, a great example of where you mentioned, even between Perth and Sydney, for example, in servers, is that there was a Counter-Strike team who was trying to qualify for a tournament in Southeast Asia. And all the players lived on the East Coast, and they had to qualify on a Singapore server. So the team literally paid for all the players to fly to Perth to play from an internet cafe in Perth because it had a slightly better ping to the Singapore server than playing from Sydney. So for those pro gamers, they take it seriously. It seems to matter to them. So absolutely anything that we can do to improve that and make that. And obviously we're kind of limited, I suspect, by the laws of physics and how fast light travels and things like that. But at the end of the day, I'm sure there are some things that we can do. Okay, so networking aside, if we're looking at tips, tricks, warming up, in-game comms, Vandy, what is your experience on things that people can be doing better, or simple things that they can add to how they get ready to play that can make life a little bit easier?
I think having access to a microphone is probably one of the biggest things you can have. The reason I say that, because it doesn't matter whether you're in console, mobile, PC, but the ability to communicate, especially because a lot of the multiplayer games, it's often you're not queuing into a solo mode, it's with a squad, with a team, and communications can kind of be the thing that, you know, the other team has on top of you. I know I've been playing a lot of Valorant recently, and when I'm solo queuing, the biggest thing that we all ask is like, who's got a mic? Because then at least you can make plays a lot easier. It doesn't matter if like one person doesn't, as long as they can type. But like I said, by having access to that just simple piece of equipment can just really change your game, especially if you're playing to win. I mean, if you're just like wanting to relax a little bit, I understand not everybody wants to talk all the time. That's why there's in-game pings and things like that, but use them. They're there to help your team. Otherwise, in that case, just go play the solo modes, right? Like, I don't understand sometimes when you get matched in games with people and they're playing the team modes and I'm like, you're playing like an individual. Just go play the solo mode. I don't understand you.
It's a
I
bit
think that
rough,
can make a
but
big difference.
yeah, that's a big tip. Communication is king in any sort of team game. You notice that in pro esports teams, and it obviously rolls back down to playing ranked or even quick play and things like that. The more info, the better your team's going to go. Domino Jack, what's your experience here as a streamer? Obviously, you still play an awful lot of games. That's the point, right? What's your experience been?
I guess to talk about maybe warming up, because I play a lot of first-person shooters as well, mainly Overwatch, playing a bit of Fortnite and stuff as well. Something I find is probably the best thing is actually using a bit of an aim trainer beforehand. I use Kovacs, do about 15 to 20 minutes of aim training. There are some specific Valorant ones and things like that, and I'll find that actually is a lot better than me just trying to jump into a game and having not warmed up. My aim will obviously be a lot worse. So I do find the warming up really does help me before I get into a match.
Yeah, it's actually a great tip. Particularly, I think, you know, we look at games and we say, hey, games are for fun. You just go in and play, which is absolutely true. But if you want to improve, in the same way you're playing, if you're a football player and your job is to kick goals, then you practice kicking goals, right? And I think your example ties into what you said before. If you make sure that you have a consistent DPS across all of your games, and then use that same DPS in your aim trainer, then when you aim train, you're literally practicing, hopefully, for all of your games at the same time. So that's a really top tip. When you combine all of your tips together, that's it's probably something I need to do, because I do not aim train. And then I complain when I play, why does my aim feel bad? Yeah, so that's a good one. Grace, what about you? Again, from a streaming perspective, what are your tips on this one?
Yeah, I think I'd probably just reiterate what the other girls said, like warming up. Normally what I'll do to warm up is just kind of have a throwaway game. So instead of jumping into ranked straight away, I'll jump into just like publics and just hot drop and just try and get as many kills as I can and just kind of unwind and loosen up a little bit. Because, you know, sometimes when you start, like I've been streaming for 5 years and I still kind of get a little bit on edge, a little bit nervous when I first start. So just get that first game in and kind of relax a little bit. And definitely communication is huge. Like lots of games, like Bandy said, has implemented in-game pings and they are amazing. Like Apex does it super well. I think Fortnite, I don't really play Fortnite. I think that's got it now. And PUBG's even started implementing it. So it's been funny seeing all these games getting influenced by each other and bringing in like different mechanics for that. Having a team that you play with consistently, like the same few teammates, you start to understand how people play. Like I'm very run and gun. I like to rush people and push aggressively. So finding other people that can either offset you and complement you as a player, I think is super important, which it can be hard because, you know, not everybody plays games for a living. Not everybody gets to play games 24/7. So I think finding a good team that is available and has good comms and that you get along with and can smash out a 6-7 hour session, I think is super valuable.
Yeah, I think gaming with friends is a massive boost for me. If I go in and solo play, quite often I'll get frustrated after half an hour because I'm bad. But if I've got someone there who can carry me, or, you know, like I think it's the experience. It ups the experience if you can find friends to play with. Either obviously friends that you know in real life or friends that you make in game. I've made a lot of really good friends playing games, and obviously them being able to play with them down the track. You know, if you find someone good in your game, maybe don't be afraid to try and add them and say hi and see if you can find yourself someone else to play with, particularly if they're better than you.
I think it's important as well is to like be positive with people as well. Like, you know, chuck them a GG WP at the end of the game. Like, don't be toxic about it. Like, we're
No
all
GG
ultimately
easy, right?
just,
Yeah.
no, we're all ultimately just playing games to have a fun time. And like, there are moments where obviously you take things too seriously and you might get a little bit ragey, but at the end of the day, we're playing video games. Like, it's not that serious.
Yeah, and that's it, right? Unless you're literally on the esports stage and you're competing for $1 million, then sure, okay, I'll give you that one. But if you're just playing with friends, maybe your elo doesn't necessarily matter that much. Well, I lost 15 elo this game. It's okay. Just calm your farm and relax. We should be having fun. But Apex Legends, Grace, that's like your one of your games of choice. What would be some tips specifically for that, seeing as it seems to be a game that you play a lot?
I will preface it with saying I'm not heaps good at it. Like, I've gotten into Diamond, and that's kind of where it's cut off.
Good result.
Yeah, I mean, with the player base, it's really tough because, as I said, like, we play on Singapore, and because the pool of players in ranked is already so small, we're up against, you know, Masters and Predators, which are the top 500 players on the platform. So as soon as you see them in the game, you're like, I'm going to land exactly the opposite side of the map because I don't want to encounter them at all.
Yeah.
I think the main thing with Apex Legends is like map rotations and knowing where people are likely to be looting, knowing where the good loot is. Making the decision early with your team to be like, all right, we're going to hot drop, we're going to try and get some early kills, and then we're going to ride out to try and get top 3 to get max points or whatever. I think communication is number one, but map knowledge, loot knowledge, knowing what guns work for you. Not everybody likes the same setup. Like, my teammates like wingmans, and I like the carbine and the Spitfire because I like to just kind of spray and pray and less about pinpoint accuracy. So I think knowing the type of player that you are, finding a team that can communicate well, and learning the maps and the rotations for sure. Because the zone, obviously with BR, starts to chunk a lot late, and you don't want to get stuck in that.
Yeah. So often you can play a BR and get caught in a fight somewhere and then not realize, right? That it literally happened to me last night. I'm like, no, I want to go in for one last kill, and then I got it, and then I died immediately to the zone. So yeah, situational awareness, super important there. Yeah. Domino, Jack, what about some tips from you? Games like Overwatch or Valorant, perhaps? Got that mute again, I think.
Sorry, yeah. Overwatch can be quite a Overwatch can be quite a complex game. There is a lot involved with Overwatch. Obviously, there's a range of different heroes. They all have different abilities. They all have different ultimates. Not everybody has a gun. You know, you've got Reinhardt with a hammer which is swinging around. So it can be quite complicated. The biggest thing in Overwatch is probably, like Grace was saying, is learning maps, knowing how you can get to different areas, how you can get through choke points, things like that. And Overwatch has, you know, like heroes like Pharah, where she can go over walls and things like that. Lucio can ride around walls. It's quite complex. Biggest thing would be to definitely find the role that you like, whether that is you like being a tank, whether you like being a support, and whether you like being the main damage dealer, the DPS, and then learning maps, learning how the ultimates work, and then really probably watching pro players and watching how they play that hero and what they do. Because even like I've been playing Overwatch for years, and I can still go watch pro players and not realize that I could have jumped over a wall somewhere and things like that, or done things in certain ways. So it's there's always something new to learn, I find, in Overwatch.
Yeah, I think there's a lot to learn from pro players in particular, because they literally, that's their job, right? Is to get good at a certain game, and they will break it down to the smallest aspect and work on all of those aspects. And that's I guess how you get good. Vandy, is there any games that you have tips on? I know you've been doing a lot of Valorant lately. I've seen all you do is stream Valorant, except for maybe Among Us, maybe. What are your tips there?
Don't ask me for Among Us tips. I'm bad at that game. I can't lie to save my life. No, but for Valorant, I mean, it's kind of what the other ladies have already covered in terms of aim training, learning maps, guns, things like that, preference. I think League of Legends is something that I could probably speak a little bit more of as well, and like how I kind of prepped in more of that MOBA sense. It would be more about like one tricking is like the easiest way to climb in a game like that. Like if there's one or two, if there's like champion-based sort of games where it's not just gun reliant and aim reliant, but if it's like got champions, heroes, utilities, things like that, the easiest way to climb is just know the ins and outs of that champion. And the funny thing about a game like League of Legends and Overwatch is they kind of build it in a sense like rock, paper, scissors. So my champion is supposed to counter this champion, blah, blah, blah. But the thing is, if you one trick them, you can generally beat a counter. Like people sometimes pick, they go, I'm good. I'm going to go pick this character because I know they're very strong against your character, but you're just picking it to count. You don't even play that champion that much. So I can just wipe the floor with you because I understand how I'm supposed to play into this matchup. So again, it just kind of goes down to doing your homework, guides and resources. There's so many free guides and resources available on YouTube. I have a very small attention span. So for me, I actually more prefer the route of just being able to click through with guides, being like, this is how I do this, this is how I do that, as opposed to having to sit through like an entire long like pro streamer, whereas like I can't really devote my attention to it because maybe I've got them on as I work during the day. So that can be a really quick way to kind of skill up in different games. And like I said, don't be afraid to one trick. But the thing is, have a backup as well, because if that one trick gets taken away or banned, have backups. But maybe have a roster of like 3 core champions that you just get really good at. It's the fastest way to climb, I found. Yeah.
So what you're saying is just because Rock beat Scissors, if the players only played Rock 3 times and you played Scissors 5,000 times, you might still win with scissors. All right.
Yeah, your scissors are made out of like titanium steel or something, right?
Yeah,
I
you're
don't know,
an
diamond
actual
tip
expert
scissors.
with scissors. Yeah, that makes perfect sense. For me, I think, there's a lot to like, if you want to go pro in a game or you just want to get better at it, I think it's definitely worth doing the research, whether that's either gameplay tips, like you mentioned, Vandy, and I think people underestimate how many guides there are on YouTube, for example, where you can go in and it literally breaks down a map, how to play this map with this hero in this fashion, in this meta, and someone's taken the time to do it. So I think that's really useful as well. And I think there's things to learn about the game you're playing from a technical side. If you go and look at like setup tips and you look at what the pros might be using, they might be playing on the lowest graphics. It might be, they know it's a CPU intensive game. So they're literally buy a better CPU because that's what this game runs better on. And you just go and you optimize what you're looking for to get that high frame rate and the high FPS. We are almost getting to the end of the panel. So if you do have questions, this is your last chance to pop them in Discord. If you've already put them in, please copy paste it in for me again because I can't see that much in there at the moment. Same for Twitch chat. If you're in there, feel free to put them through. I'm going to put you on the spot, Luke. I'm going to say, Luke, what is your gameplay tip for a specific game? What's your favorite game and what is your gameplay tip? Nathan, I'm coming to you next. So I'll give you a heads up on this one. Luke, you go first.
So I said earlier it's got to be Halo. So Halo 2, Halo 3, Halo 5. Looking forward to the new one when that comes out. Honestly, as someone who's really tried to rank up pretty hard, a bit sweaty on it, I won't lie. The number one thing is learning to blame yourself. If you can get to the point where you lose and you can be mature enough to say, okay, it's a lot of effort to do this, right? But go back over the tape, like go and look at like the mistakes you made. And you start to do that, you realize just how many mistakes you make every single game.
Yeah,
that was the biggest thing for me. Once I learned to do that, and then put that in my mindset every time I play. So even when you win a game, if you have a bad run in it, just think, what did I do wrong? What did I do wrong? What did I do wrong? Keep asking yourself that again and again, and you'll be amazed at just how much better you get. And also, if you're playing with like a teammate, you can often get annoyed at each other, right? So you also learn to stop arguing and falling out. And you both, if you can both, or all 4 of you, however many, get in that mindset, it's the biggest reason you can get better, I'd say.
I think that's good life advice in general, Luke, to be honest. Like for me, even in my esports commentary, I can think I've done a really good commentary of a game. But if I come back a week later and I rewatch it critically, I can go, well, that was good, but these are the things that I could do better. And then knowing that the other bits you've got down pat, you can work on that for next time. So I think that's just good life advice in general, but particularly does apply to video games. So that's a good one. Nathan, what about you? What do you play most? Obviously, head of gaming at Telstra. I'm expecting something awesome. What's your tip?
Look, I play mostly BR stuff. And a lot with friends, which I think can be good or bad. Like it's good. So comms are really important to me, and I'm not particularly good at them, but getting better. And I feel like that's the advantage of playing with friends. There is better communication, but I think on the downside, and to kind of Luke's point, you're also probably more likely to get frustrated with each other. Faster just by nature of those friendships. So for me it's comms, especially in BR modes, and just trying to get accurate and a little bit more concise at that, and not freaking out as much, right? It's he's over there and you're like, where is there?
What's there? Over there. Over there. Yeah, that's the best
there,
one.
that's right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
He's behind me. Well, where are you? Like it's
yeah. And I think that transition, like especially between titles, some of the COD titles in PUBG, you kind of get better at using your compass and using numbers to communicate, where obviously other titles don't. You don't kind of use that as naturally. So it does kind of vary a little bit title to title in terms of how you communicate, which is really key.
Yeah, makes a difference. Vandy, Elo Hell, we've all been there. What are your tips? Is it about comms? Is it about raging? Is it like Luke said, blame yourself, or do you blame the support volley bear that I like to play? What are your tips for getting out of Elo Hell?
You're giving me flashbacks. So it was kind of funny. I was playing a different MOBA, Heroes of the Storm, and then it kind of died on the competitive side. And I really like to play games competitively. Like, I don't mind playing with my friends, but I always love when there's like a ranked mode because it gives me something to kind of work towards and keep coming back for. So I came back to League after like a 3-year hiatus. It placed me in Iron, which is the lowest rank you could get. It was like a new rank that they introduced. That's just how low it was. Because before the lowest rank was Bronze. And I was like, well, I used to be like Plat Diamond. Let's see if we can climb back up there again. And I found the biggest thing was just, as I said, like focusing on your own gameplay, the tip that Luke gave you. Comms, I just kind of like muted all chat. Like I just didn't care about what my team was saying because I was like, you idiots can all talk to each other. I'm going to like focus on winning the game. Like I find that just makes a huge difference. Like I used to, like when I was definitely younger, I used to get full keyboard warrior, waste all of my games sitting at the phone typing to them. Such a waste of time. Like forget about it, you know? Also, I guess knowing that even if a game feels lost, just keep playing. Like we've turned some pretty ridiculous games around just because we kept playing. Like, and I guess if you want to kind of encourage your team, you can. I don't really like to do that because it can kind of go one of two ways. Like they all just kind of ban and say, shut up to you. But I mean, just like praising something good. If you see your team doing something good, like that guy stole Dragon, even though he was like 3 levels behind. Thanks, man. Like you did a good job. Yeah. Nice steal, stuff like that. Like it doesn't have to be like a huge pat on the back, but like those little things can really help like the whole overall mentality of the game.
Doesn't take much, does it? Right? Is what you're saying. Like, and if people were going to be mean to you, maybe they're probably going to be mean to you anyway. So you haven't lost anything. Just give it a burl. Is that the sentiment?
Oh, definitely. But I also found as well, like adjusting like the strategy. So it was really funny because Master Yi and Jax, they like never get played outside of like these sort of like lower elo levels, but knowing that they were like the most feared of that elo. So just banning accordingly. And as we got higher up into like silver, gold, like you kind of just understand what the meta of that elo is. And reach out to coaches and things like that. A lot of streamers or coaches and things like that will do like sometimes free VOD reviews or like $10 VOD reviews. Like it's really not that expensive. You submit them a VOD and the fastest way to improve, again, a tip that Luke said, even if it's not you going in and analyzing it, getting a professional or an outsider to analyze it and just give you quick feedback on how you can improve instead of the same advice everybody gets. Super valuable.
Yeah, real specific. That's a really good point. I definitely paid $25 for a VOD review once for StarCraft 2 when I was in Plat, and it was good advice, but then I learned that I was just not that good at StarCraft 2, so I went to talking about video games instead. So that was where I got to. That's how I escaped Elo Hell, was to just, change my tact. What about you, Domino Jack? How do you find that? What are your tips and tricks for getting out of the depths of Bronze 5?
Bronze 5. Well, there is a bronze in Overwatch, that's for sure. I haven't actually ever been in it. I've been close. I've been pretty low in silver. Every elo in Overwatch is very different, though. The lower you get in elo, people don't use mics either, so that does make it harder. Biggest thing for Overwatch in low ranks is aim. Your biggest thing is just having really good aim. Aim can get you, easily gold, probably higher into plat. And then it starts becoming a lot about the game knowledge and, countering ultimates, knowing how to play the game a lot better. But yeah, there's a lot of elo hell throughout Overwatch. And Overwatch is very much a team game as well. So there is only so much you can do. There is 5 other people on your team. So it is unfortunate when communication lacks in the lower ranks, because it's definitely beneficial. But yeah.
it can be rough, right? And I think that's the hardest part. I think also playing with a friend, which was something I think Grace mentioned before. If there's a couple of you in there, then maybe, you've got at least one person on your side. So I think that's also good as well. I always find if I can play with my partner or something, at least you can communicate with each other and you can rely on one other person amongst the 5 or 6 in the game. So We've got a couple of questions, so I'll let anyone jump in. If you've got some input, you're more than welcome to. The first question is, any advice on where or how to find people to play with in a team or train with? Obviously, depends a lot on the game, but are there any general tips on where to find someone?
Well, I personally have a part of my Discord where we have like looking for teammates. So we have like a role manager where you can go in and select what games you want to play with people. And then someone can type into the lobby like, hey, I'm looking for 2 people to play Apex with or PUBG or whatever. And we can ping that role and then people can link up and try and do that. And that's something that's been pretty successful. Like I sometimes go on my Smurf account on Apex and help carry people out of bronze. And it's like, it's so fun for me because I get like 12 kills per game. And it's fun for them because they're actually climbing. So yeah, I mean, streamers, a lot of streamers have really great Discord. So if you have a streamer that you like to watch, they might have that kind of thing in their community.
Yeah, awesome. That's a good tip. Discord servers.
Yeah. I was going to say Discord servers. All you do is you type in like whatever the game is and then type OC or AUS at the end. And there's like heaps of community Discords to find people with. It's been the quickest way that I can connect with other people when you're just trying to look to fill in the numbers or just get friends real quickly. Because again, you're all just in that thing. And the thing is, a lot of these servers let you like sort by rank and like what kind of agents or something you like. I'm just thinking of Valorant when I'm in, but it's like you sort by your rank and the agents you're in, and you can match up accordingly with other people.
Yeah, that's super handy. That sort of ties into how do you make friends and not enemies online. I guess go to places where like Discords where maybe the people are more likely to want to chat to you because they're there for that purpose. The other thing I'd say is don't be afraid of making quote unquote enemies online. If someone's not nice to you in a video game, just block them and move on. There are lots of people to play with. If someone doesn't seem like the type of person you want to hang with, you can get rid of that one. What's the minimum you should expect to pay for a good headset mic? Does anyone have anything they want to add there? Grace, I know that you've spent some time recently working on headset reviews.
Yeah, did they say headset mic specifically?
Headset/mic.
Oh, okay. I mean, again, it kind of depends on if you're creating content. So in terms of content creation, I would probably never recommend a headset mic. So I'd say at minimum, get like an NC USB or something that is relatively clear, because it's one thing to have comms, it's another thing to have crappy comms. And it's like, you don't want to be coming through like Mr. Roboto. You want to be sounding nice and crispy for your teammates, especially if, you know, one of your other teammates might be streaming or whatever. You want everyone to sound decent and legible. So minimum to spend for a headset. I mean, you're probably looking at like $150 to $200 for a good headset if you want something, you know, that's going to have good directional audio, noise cancellation, and all that good stuff that we need for the sweaty plays.
Yeah. And I guess for mics, right, the benefit of a microphone is that you can go onto YouTube and you can listen to someone do a review of a microphone through the microphone. So there's lots of cool mics, even you don't have to go to like a microphone, like, you know, specifically an audio store. Even like JB Hi-Fi has Rode microphones. Rode's an Aussie company made here in Sydney. Yeah, exactly. They're really, really good quality. Made in Sydney, Aussie mics, and you can get a USB mic for under $200. And I know that sounds like a lot of money, but like that difference between that and maybe like a headset mic, particularly if you're streaming, I think is a big deal. So like if you look at you, Grace, me, Vandy, Domino Jack, we all have Thingo mics from what I can see. So, you know, all different brands, but that's what we're using because that's sort of our job. So that's our input there. And the last one,
audio is like number one over even visuals, because if someone has crappy audio, I'm clicked off. If their videos, if they don't even have a webcam, I don't really care. If their audio sounds good, that's number one for sure. Yeah,
that's it. Easy, good audio is enough. And one last question before we start closing up, and I'll go to you for this one, Domino Jack, because you did talk about this a little bit before. How much time would you spend practicing game mechanics such as aiming in shooters, combos and fighting games outside of actual matches? Like, is there a point where there's too much practice, and what would you say is the good mix?
So there is you could definitely do too much practice, because if you are performing poorly, you don't want to keep practicing bad mechanics. I'm doing 15 to 20 minutes a day, prior to playing some matches as well. If I don't get time to play matches, I'm still trying to do 15 to 20 minutes a day of just practicing mechanics. And then further to that, once you have played matches, like I think Luke mentioned it, is you want to go back and watch your replays. You actually want to spend some time going back over your gameplay and learning from your mistakes. That's just as valuable, if not maybe more valuable, than just playing the game, because you're actually figuring out what you're doing wrong and fixing those errors to become a better player. So there is a balance between training your mechanics, playing the actual game, but then reviewing your gameplay as well.
Yeah, awesome. Okay, well, I hope everyone enjoyed our panel. I learned things. I hope you guys learnt things as well. There's a lot to take away with it. So to Grace, Vandy, Luke, Nathan, and Domino Jack, thank you for being a part of this one. I hope everyone watching at home enjoyed it. And enjoy the rest of the PAX panels. And we'll see you later.
Thanks for having us.
Thanks.
Hey,
Thank you.
bye.
Bye.